SubCommittee meeting of the Charity Trustee SubCommittee. Thank you for attending. Thank you to those who are here in person, to the members, officers, and to anybody who is watching it via the web system. My name is Richard Williams and I chair this subcommittee. The meeting today is open to the public. However, there are some documents which are not available to the public and press, in particular item 8, Graves Park Animal Farm Coffee Concession. The appendix to the report is not available to the public or press because it contains exempt information relating to financial and business affairs. If members wish to discuss the information in the appendix, we will need to ask members of the public and press to kindly leave for that part of the meeting, and we will pause the webcast. For item 11, similarly, Norton Nurseries update. Again, the appendix to the report is not available to public or press because it contains exempt information relating to finance and business affairs. We will be asking the press and public to leave for this part of the meeting and pausing the webcast. What I would say, for the benefit of everybody, we will try and keep as much as possible open. I think that's important. But there are, and I will take advice on this, there are certain elements where, if necessary, they come up, we will have to go into a private session. Thank you. We have received one agenda-related question from the member of the public. And in terms of housekeeping, please may I ask and request that mobile phones and other such equipment switch to silent mode as to not disturb the conduct of the meeting. I'm assured that there are no fire tests planned for today, so if the alarms go off and there is an emergency evacuation, please take instruction from the Town Hall staff. Our assembly point is Tudor Square, and I am now going to ask the members of this subcommittee to introduce themselves and officers as and when you participate in the discussion. So we'll start with yourself, please, Douglas.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, Douglas Johnson, Councillor for City Ward. That's it, really.
Fran Belbin, Councillor for Firth Park Ward and Deputy Chair of the Committee.
Councillor Mark Whittaker, Councillor for Stocksbridge and Upper Don. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Councillor Curtis Crossland. I am a local councillor for the Bayton Ward and chair of the Communities, Parks and Leisure Committee.
Thank you, and just to repeat, I am Councillor Richard Williams. I represent the Stannington Ward and chair this committee, subcommittee. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies today?
Just Councillor Chaplin, Chair, and Councillor Whittaker is here as a substitute.
Welcome, Mark. Nice to see you. Item 2 is exclusion of the press and public, as I've already advised. Did you want to say something, Douglas?
Yes, there's another one. There's another one I haven't mentioned yet. Item 10, I think, also has, item 9, sorry, also has something confidential, I think. So probably all should be open about that. Open about it being confidential. Let me just have a check. At least in my pack, this was marked as restricted somewhere, I think. Am I wrong about that? Maybe I am. Okay,
it's
all right.
The final appendix to item 8, you might be thinking of. Yeah.
That's fine. The other thing I just want to say is, I mean, just on the, there's been a bit of discussion about how appropriate it is to exclude some of the appendices for item 11 from the public, but do you want to deal with that when we get to item 11?
Yes, I think that's appropriate. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Right. Declarations of interest, item 3. Do any members wish to declare an interest in any of the topics we will be discussing today? Silence reigns, so I'll take that as a no. Item 4 is minutes of the previous meeting, and our last meeting was, correctly, the 3rd of March. And what I will do, I'll go through page by page, and if you have any queries, please could you indicate? Thank you. So, the minutes of the 3rd of March, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15, and the minutes as a whole. No queries? Okay, they are taken as approved. Item 5 are public questions and petitions. As we said, we have received one agenda-related item. This is from the Friends of Graves Park, who are in attendance and wish to read their questions. Please, would you like to come forward and do that? Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Caroline. Good to see you again. Do you want to read all your questions, or would you prefer to have question and answer? It's entirely up to yourself.
Read questions and then answers. Is that okay? So, can I just check, am I asking both sets of questions today? So I'll do the questions that I submitted 2.5 weeks ago. And then the questions that refer to the agenda item 11, I think it is. Do I read those separately but at the same time, or?
I'd suggest if you read your first lot first and then the chair can respond, and then do your second lot after that and the chair can respond. That'll probably be easy.
Okay, so questions for the Charity Subcommittee meeting 23rd of June from the Friends of Grace Park. In 2024, Friends of Grace Park stated that while they were broadly in favour of the glass houses at Norton Nurseries being brought back into use, they asked for assurances that the greenhouses being used would not adversely affect the long-standing request to restore the next section of the Norton Nurseries back to parkland. We were given assurances of this by the subcommittee. Is the subcommittee aware that since then, council officers have allocated part of the next section of the Arboretum as car parking for the glasshouse operators, Foodworks? Can the subcommittee ensure that council officers are instructed that the car parking must be moved to another area of the site with immediate effect, as once permission is given to start work on the restoration, this site, our Arboretum extension, needs to be clear? Will the subcommittee please instruct the council officers to authorise the commencement of the restoration of this next section of the site back to parkland, as they are able to continue their operation of the depot without this piece of land, as it is virtually unused? Please bear in mind that Friends of Grace Park are ready to start the restoration process as soon as we receive permission.
Thank you. Yeah, the land at Norton Nurseries, which the Friends of Grace Park wish to restore, is currently required for parks operations, including for maintenance of Grace Park, as referenced in our responses in 24, 23 and 22. In the event of a decision taken to move part or all of the operation from Norton Nurseries and to permit the Friends group to begin works on the section referred, any necessary reconfiguration of use or space will be undertaken, so that that parking will not be used and you will be given access to the land. We're still working on it. It's taken time. There is an urgency to get something resolved as soon as it's practically possible. But the car parking is being used at the moment because the land isn't available, but when it becomes available, the car parking will no longer be used. Thank you.
Right, next set of questions which refer to the decision report regarding the Norton Nurseries. The Friends of Grace Park are appalled at the secrecy and lack of transparency in the decision report regarding the Norton Nurseries. Why is this confidential? When will the public get access to this information? When did councillors approve the consultation of external legal advisors? Which councillors approved this? How much did this cost? Who is paying? Is it the Graves Park Trust? Why are appendices A to C confidential? This is a public park owned by the citizens of Sheffield. Appendix B, To what legal proceedings is Ruth Bell referring? Item 4. To be clear, council officers have neither consulted nor engaged with Friends of Grace Park about this issue since November 2021. This is when we were told that council officers would no longer discuss the Norton Nurseries issue until SCC's Parks Department's position changed. Item 4 is therefore untrue. Item 7.1, Friends of Grace Park wish to remind SCC's Parks Department and the trustees that SCC has a duty and responsibility to maintain Graves Park. This statement suggests that the Graves Park Trust would be better off if paid directly the funds for its maintenance by the council, and then the maintenance should be done by someone other than Parks Department.
Okay, thank you again. The advice I've received is that the advice is legal advice in respect of how to best advise a trust. It was commissioned by monitoring officers. It remains legally privileged so that the committee may understand it. In terms of your second question, the advice was commissioned by the council's monitoring officer in furtherance of the duty on them to secure legal advice from the council. The monitoring officer's discretion is absolute on such matters. The cost is met through a budget held elsewhere in Parks and Countryside, independent of the Graves Park Trust. It will not be costing the trust any money whatsoever. Appendices A to C are confidential because the appendices relate to legal advice to be provided to the committee. The reason for exemption is above, it's privileged at the moment. Appendix B, to what legal proceedings is Ruth Bell referring? The statement reads that Appendix B is not for publication because it contains information in respect of which a claim to legal professional privilege could be maintained in legal proceedings. The exemption is based on legal advice privilege. There are no ongoing legal proceedings. Your issue with item 4, I would actually disagree with you when you say that we've had no discussions about this since 2021. I've been party to discussions in this chamber, and we've regularly answered questions from yourselves relating to this issue over the last 7 months. We discussed it in July and have brought papers setting out the most recent position. Whether we are doing enough to communicate with you, I think, is something I shall have to consider, and where, if we are failing you in that respect, we will look at that.
Can I just say on that point, my question refers, and my statement refers to council officers, not councillors. So councillors have been absolutely fine. Thank you.
Okay, I note that point, thank you. Item 7.1.
Sorry, Chair. Just want to ask about it. I know we don't normally have a discussion about public questions or answer public questions, but I am concerned about this. Sorry, I've just got a note here. Right, this is important because we all know it's a contentious issue, and Karen and the Friends of Graves Park will rightly ask a question and can be answered. Wouldn't necessarily agree with the premise of the questions entirely, but it's simply not true to say that the appendix B to this report has been kept confidential so that we can understand it. That's just a nonsense, isn't it? Because we would understand it if it were also available to the public. There's a bit more to it than that. So I just think we can't, in all fairness, let that lie. And in fairness to ourselves, there might be good reasons to keep it confidential, but can we just have a bit of time just to explain more clearly why and indeed whether we think that should be kept confidential? The second point on that is one of Karen's questions was about appendices A and C, and it says the answer you've just given, appreciate that was prepared for you, is saying that it relates to legal advice. That's simply not true. You know, can we just have a bit of clarity about what they do cover? It's simply not about legal advice. There are 3 appendices there and they cover different things. I just think we need to be truthful with people. We can't keep concealing things.
Cool, absolutely. Obviously, what's happened
So
is...
would you just like to introduce?
Oh, yes, sorry, everybody. I'm Sherry Grant, and I'm the monitoring officer for the purposes of this committee this afternoon. In terms of the legal advice that's been received, I mean, obviously we don't normally take questions at this point, but just for clarity, because I know that's going to come up later, I think we've received this legal advice and obviously this sort of commercially sensitive information in there. When you get legal advice, and obviously you're considering it, which is obviously what's been asked of the members today, they've been asked to consider that legal advice, and obviously that will form part of the debate. That's why at this moment that is legally privileged and isn't going to be obviously available to members of the public. Now, we're not saying that that will always be the case. It's just at the moment, while we're looking at the position, that is able to be, and bona fide, to be able to be legally privileged. And that's why we've made the decision, and as monitoring officer, that that is legally privileged at the moment until that's been considered. And then at one point when we've reviewed it, considered it, and members have considered it, it could be, obviously, then be, it could, at some point, I'm not saying it will, but it could be made available to the public.
Are you happy with that, Douglas?
So that's the explanation of why the bit that is legally privileged is legally privileged, and whether we agree with that or not, but it doesn't address the other appendices, which are clearly not legally privileged. What are we saying about that? I mean, I think you said it's commercially confidential. Is that the true answer and not what the chair's just read out? I mean, can we give the chair some correct information so he can give that as a formal answer? And it's not fair on the chair to be left with something that's frankly misleading.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I think what I think we've got to do is that I think people are thinking that there's something that's not, I think it is purely a legal point in terms of why that hasn't been, you know, in the fact that when you get legal advice, you consider it. At that point, in any legal setting, you wouldn't disclose that at that point because you're considering it, you're considering what your options are. So that's where we are. So what I can assure members of and assure everybody here today is that there is no ulterior motive to why that is being legally privileged at this stage. It's just that as legal advisors to this committee, we are just considering that and obviously want to give advice, further legal advice on that point. So that is the only reason, and I think that is just the normal way of legal processes and proceedings, and that's the reason why obviously members, people haven't been provided with it today.
Okay.
I am slightly reticent to open up a conversation about this. I think we need to move on. I think if necessary you can raise these issues when we just get to agenda item 11. Okay, but I'd like to move on if I may.
Yep, absolutely, you can move on. I'm just conscious we're probably going to have to revisit this item 11. It's frankly a bit of a dog's dinner at the moment, and you know, one option could just be to bump this off until we can have some proper advice from officers with a proper course of action so it can be done openly. Should we leave to item 11 then?
We'll leave it to item 11 and we'll decide at the end of our discussions whether it is a dog's dinner or actually whether it's a decent piece of work. Thank you. Apologies for that, Caroline. Moving back to your questions, your next question regarding was 7.1. In the statement 7.1, the statement read the fully costed options of how the Grays Park charity could undertake its maintenance will be set out for the trustee to consider at a future meeting. I don't believe this statement would suggest that Grays Park will be better off if it is directly paid funds for its maintenance by the council and then maintenance done by someone other than the Parks Department. We just haven't made those decisions yet. Looking back at the original meeting we had in July last year, we said at the time we wanted to look at all the options. That is what we're doing. It's a difficult task because some of the options we would like to follow potentially are closed down because of the council's issues over land needs for other things. But we are looking at them. I remain committed as chair to ensuring that all the options are open and that we come back with the best solution for the charity as per our remit. If it takes, I'd rather it takes longer and gets to the right decision rather than do something that isn't comprehensive. And as and when we get to that point, obviously, then we will have an open debate. Thank you very much. Item 6 is members' questions. There were none received. And then we move on to item 7, which is the work programme. And Joanne, would you like to?
My copy's gone astray.
Okay.
Thank you. I've printed out an updated copy of the work programme. Oh, sorry, Joanne Cooper, Democratic Services. I've printed out a further copy, an amended copy of the work programme, which is on members' desks, because there've been a couple of changes since the agenda pack was published. It's nothing major. The main differences are that we've got items about Aincliffe Park Cafe and Lodge, which are going to be at the next meeting in September. At one point they were going to be at this meeting, but they've been moved to September for reasons, procedural reasons to do with the transaction, I think. And then there was 2 separate items on the work programme that was published about Norton Nurseries, but they've been combined into this item that we're hearing today. So I think that's the main. Officer's looking at me confused, is that right? Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any questions regarding our future work programme at this time? Douglas.
I think we had a couple of items to go on about the tennis hub, presumably in Hillsborough Park, unless it was all of them, and then something about tram lines. Were they added into the programme? I think there were requests at one of our pre-meetings.
I can respond on that if that's helpful, Chair. I'm Ruth Bell, Head of Parks and Countryside. I think it was agreed that there would be knowledge briefings because there will be no further decisions to be taken on those matters. So I think updates were going to be provided, but there won't be anything coming here because there isn't anything that a formal decision, where a formal decision will be taken.
We've got dates as well.
Yeah.
I think we've got dates for those.
Just to follow that up, I think it's important that we do, as a subcommittee, continue to monitor these things, make sure they're going in the right direction. Last year, Tramlines was incredibly successful due to an awful lot of work that was put in to protect the park. It would be remiss of us if we didn't ensure that similar support was given to Tramlines, just in case we don't repeat what happened 2 years ago. And so, but I think knowledge briefings are a way of doing it. And there are a number of things, including Hillsborough Tennis Hub and the spokes, the tram lines, Rose Garden Cafe, for example. It's, you know, how things are progressing on that. But it's important that this group is fully aware of what's going on. Thank you. Any other questions about the work programme? No? Okay, well, that's our recommendation is just to note that, isn't it? Can we please note that? Thank you. I'll take that as approved. Thank you. Right, moving through to the agenda items again. Item 8 is a report on Grays Park and the Animal Farm Coffee Concession. This does contain some confidential information, but if I could ask Catherine to come forward and present this. If you'd like to introduce yourself, thank you.
Hello, I'm Catherine McDougall. I am the Graves Park manager, and I am presenting a report on the Graves Park, Animal Farm and Charles Ashmore coffee carts. Essentially, this, I'm not intending to read through the whole thing. This report requests the charity trustee subcommittee to agree to go out to tender for 2 locations, that is in Groves Park Animal Farm and Charles Ashmore. And because we want to tender these both to start at the same time, these contracts, we would like to extend the coffee cart at Charles Ashmore to the 31st of March, as it is about to run out in sort of end of August at the moment. So essentially, there are 3 things we're requesting. Extension of the existing coffee cart licence at Charles Ashmore until the 31st of March 2026, and then to go out to tender for the coffee cart provision at Charles Ashmore, and also to go out to tender at the coffee cart for the animal farm. This is to go to market to ensure the charity is getting best value out of those concessions. We think it's really positive to have 2 coffee carts in addition to the existing Rose Garden Cafe. It's a very big 250-acre park, so a bonus to have them in there. But we will bring back, once we've gone out to market, had tenders into us, we will come back for a decision to the subcommittee.
Thank you very much. Just to reiterate, you're asking us permission to go out to tender. You're not asking us to make any decisions about who gets it or whatever at this stage. Is that absolutely clear?
That's correct. The only slight change is that we are asking to extend an existing one for a couple of months, just so we can start both new contracts concurrently.
Thank you very much. And the members have any questions? Douglas.
Yeah, fine. No difficult ones. Just got a couple of things to clarify. It basically seems sensible, and also I'm just saying, yeah, it's a closed appendix there, and completely understand why that's closed for good reason, for protecting businesses there. Just the main question I got is, I think we're saying that, you know, wanting to do a procurement exercise for both coffee carts, do it concurrently, which makes sense. Just checking that there'll still be possible to operate 2 businesses separately from each other, and it's not a single licence to cover both locations.
Yeah, good question. Yes, there will be 2 separate licences. You know, it's not to say that one company wouldn't get them both, but there will be 2 separate licences. They'll just start and run at the same time, so we can just save a bit of admin and save coming to this committee multiple times at multiple different times a year, as and when they do run out.
Thanks. That makes sense, and that is the answer I wanted, because otherwise it would have the effect of forcing one or the other businesses out, at least. That's not going to happen, so that's good. The other question I got is about, so the other thing is, it's welcome that you're talking about something where there's going to be plug-in provision, so we don't have someone sitting in the park running a generator all day. Good step forward. Appreciate a lot of history of that. Thank you for the work on that. Just on the procurement, so that there'll be extra points, if you like, if someone's got solar panels on the vehicle as well. I'm just thinking, does that actually take us anywhere? Does that then become a sort of a difficult and kind of irrelevant burden in a procurement? But if we are having things in like that, could we actually have something in that addresses the issue of, say, disposable cups, plates, bowls, disposable plastics, as something that really would make a difference to the park and actually should and could be a factor in the procurement, if that's at all possible?
Yes, we can absolutely, and we will weight the responses according to that. Obviously, it will be best value for financial income for the charity, but we will weight on quality of tender, and so there will be scoring questions where we ask things like, what are your environmental credentials? Are you doing anything that improves the park environmentally and aesthetically as well, and reduces the burden on litter in the park, which is always great for us.
Well, specifically, it also has a cost. So, I mean, yes, it is an important step to make sure there's an environmental statement there, so it's not just financial, but bearing in mind that the cost to running the park includes the cost of picking up endless streams of litter, so the less the better. Now, thanks very much. I'm happy with that.
Any other questions or queries? No? Okay. Thank you, Douglas. Actually, really important questions. Thank you. In that case, we'll go to the recommendations, which are as follows. The Charity Trustee Subcommittee is recommended to 1, approve the extension of the current mobile coffee cart licence at Graves Park, Charles Ashmore Road entrance from the 20th of September 2025 to the 31st of March 2026 to align with the expiry of the Animal Farm coffee cart licence. 2, approve the commencement of a procurement procedure for a new coffee cart operator at 1 Graves Park, Giles Ashmore entrance, effective from the 1st of April 2026, subject to approval of recommendation 1. And secondly, Graves Park Animal Farm, as the current licence also ends on the 31st of March 2026. Third and finally, note that a further report will be brought to this committee following the procurement process, seeking approval to enter into new licence agreements with the recommended operators for both sites, effective from the 1st of April 2026. Are we all agreed? Yes, that is a unanimous agreement. Thank you very much, and thank you for your report. Item 9 and item 10 are kind of related, but we're taking them separately. Yeah, okay. So item 9 is the provision of temporary facilities for golf at High Hazels Park. Would you like to introduce yourself, Tammy, and present your report?
Hello, I'm Tammy Barris. I'm the Head of Sport, Leisure and Major Events at the Council, so apologies, the name tag's not quite right, but that's who I am. So the first report's in respect of temporary golf provision in High Hazels Park. I think, Douglas, you mentioned a point about information in the report, and I think what you're referring to is it talks about there not being any exempt information, but actually the report that is referenced as background information did contain exempt. So just as a point of clarification, please, if I could put that on record, because it's not in the report. So this report asks for permission to install temporary accommodation in High Hazels Park on the car park, and this is to support the continued operation of the golf services in Tinsley Park. We're asking to do that for a period of 18 months, and should we need to go beyond that, to come back to committee to seek further approval. We're hopeful that during that time we will be able to undertake the surveys that we require on High Hazels House. We need to do that to develop options moving forwards for the house, what we want to do in terms of investment in that property. Putting the temporary accommodation in will allow us to enable the golf course to continue operation and provide safe accommodation for everyone, active staff, whilst those more intrusive surveys are taking place. It will also ensure that we continue to provide welfare facilities for both park users and the golf users on site. The facilities in the car park will occupy a small area in the car park, so we're not expecting that will have any detrimental impact on park users or golf users. We plan to use the leisure investment budget to source the funding for this, so there's money within the overall leisure envelope to fund this. We plan to purchase the temporary accommodation rather than hire it, so that the accommodation remains available for the council for use in the future on an alternative site potentially. The cost of the installation is estimated currently at 323,000, just over. As I've said, we'll retain ownership of that, meaning that we can benefit for that in the longer term. So we'd like approval to install the temporary accommodation so that we can build our long-term plans and ensure effective operations of the golf continues on the site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any members have any questions or comments? Fran.
Thanks. Yeah, I think this is obviously a sensible thing to do to keep the golf facilities open. I had a more general question really, which was around the process behind this, and I'm mindful of other decisions that have come to this committee, for instance on the Rose Garden Cafe, where we're looking at structural issues within buildings, and we do not want another situation like the Rose Garden Cafe actually. So do we have a kind of programme of checking for whether we need these kinds of structural works and structural investigations? I just wonder how much history has there been behind this one, and are we looking at other potential buildings that might be in similar situations?
Okay, so I can answer in respect of this particular facility. I can't talk about other buildings outside of the scope of my own portfolio of work. So there's been a lot of work in the past around the buildings that were previously managed by Sheffield City Trust, and also the Places Leisure contract in readiness for appointing a new operator. So prior to undertaking the procurement, we did have some surveys undertaken by RLB and Coops, who were the agent managing maintenance for Sheffield City Trust, did undertake some work on site under the contract. That's identified that we need to do a little bit more, and in order to do that little bit more, the safest option is to move the staff that are working in that building out into temporary accommodation. So that's where this has come from. So we have done work historically on this site, and it's the whole point of doing the surveys to understand more about that building, what needs doing, what investment's required. Once we've got that information, there'll be further reports for consideration. This just allows us that step to get a front foot and understand what we need to do in terms of that building. It is a grade 2 listed building, so, you know, obviously we want to get it right and get the information right.
Is there a broader question? I'm looking at Lisa and Ruth, I suppose, now then, that's around, okay, so we did that one because there was a procurement exercise going on, but what are we doing in general to ensure that we are not leaving it too late to do these kinds of structural surveys, basically, and waiting until after problems have arisen?
Thank you. I'm Lisa Firth, Director of Parks, Leisure and Libraries. It depends on the facility, on the building. So some of those sit within our Ruth's remit, which we have leases or licenses where the repair and maintenance sits with someone, for instance, who operates a cafe. In other circumstances, then that sits with our facilities and property management team. And I understand there is a big piece of work ongoing with the asset management strategy and the corporate landlord approach to understand our buildings, the condition of them, and asset rationalisation. So the ones that are in our remit regularly assessed and checked, and then the others that aren't part of that asset management programme.
Okay, Fran. Hey, Douglas.
Yeah, thanks. Just wanted to ask a bit about the costs. First of all, actually, I want to ask, what's the current use of the house? Is the golf club using that as their premises? I vaguely know the building, I must admit, but I don't know the detail of it. What's operating from there at present?
So in the house at present, it's hosting the operation of the golf facilities, as you've talked about. There's also a little shop in there where golf users can purchase equipment, and there are toilets, although they are in need of refurbishment, and that's part of the reason for doing this work. There's also potential to run a cafe out of that site. There has been one on there in the past, but it's not currently operating as a cafe. So these are all things that we'd like to explore as part of the work that we're doing going forward, but at the moment its main purpose is running as the kind of hub for the operation of the golf facilities, with some ancillary facilities that are available for park users for welfare and toilets. And there is a room upstairs that occasionally gets used by members of the public or for golf meetings, but I don't think that's been used as much in recent times, but there is space available on the upper floor for meeting space.
Yeah, that's good. So it's usable. I was just checking it's not like a Rose Garden Cafe situation where we're saying the building's unusable at the moment. So that's fine. In terms of the cost, though, I mean, you've got $323,000 for doing the cost of the porter cabins. What about the cost of the surveys? What's that going to cost? Because that's going to be quite a long period of time, isn't it?
I'm sorry, Douglas, I don't have that information with me at the moment. I can seek that, but it is part of the costed life cycle maintenance planning work that was done for the leisure investment piece. So the costs of those surveys will be borne as part of that, what was termed backlog maintenance, I think, in those original reports. So this is about recognising that we need to bring the buildings up to a good standard, and part of that is looking at High Hazels House and getting that building into the standard that we want it to be.
That's okay. really want to ask about, I'm trying to get to the bottom of, are we being asked to approve this amount of spending today? Because if so, we could do with knowing how much the surveys are. And are we being asked to approve the 323,000 specifically? No,
Sorry, no. The report is not asking you to approve the money. The money has already been approved as part of the leisure investment programme. So that money is already there, sat separately. But because this site is charitable, we're asking for permission to site the temporary accommodation, and to keep things obviously transparent to the committee. We want to keep you informed about what's happening on that site, and the fact that we'll be moving the golf out of that building for a short period of time whilst we do some further work. But there's no request for the funding because that has already been approved as part of the wider model for investment across the whole of the leisure estate.
Okay, so the reason, I suppose what I'm really looking at is, given that it is quite a lot of money, I mean, it's 323,000 just for the porta cabins, there's then the cost of surveys, and presumably there's going to be some quite extensive capital work once that's worked out. So I'm guessing that could run into the millions. It's quite a substantial investment. I mean, given that, you know, 323 just for the porta cabins is to enable it. Where was this actually decided? Because I can't find anything, and looking back on the reports we've had previously, there's been nothing to say that we're going to allocate that. Because every other park in the city is going to say, well, why is this park being prioritised when all the others haven't? Have we got a decision record anywhere of this?
So in terms of the decision record, it was about investing in the leisure investment facilities, of which the golf course is one of them. So that makes up a suite of a number of facilities across the city that culminates into our leisure estate. So the decision for the investment sits as part of that. That's not on a granular line-by-line level. There was a 30-year business case developed across leisure that showed investments coming from the operation of the leisure facilities against the cost of bringing those facilities back up to a decent level, backlog maintenance investment, and also redevelopment of a number of sites, so new build leisure centres, for example, a part of that work and development. So there's not an individual line decision in respect of Tinsley, but there's an overall envelope of funding to support the work on the leisure estate.
Please may I add something? Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Johnson, I think the other point to note on this is that there is a very small part, one hole I think it is, of Tinsley golf course that sits within High Hazels Park. So that's why we've got a split between the decisions that have been made on the whole of the leisure investment and the 117 million that have been taken at Strategy and Resources Committee. But because one of the holes and the clubhouse of the golf sit within High Hazels Park, hence the decision needs to be taken by the Charity Subcommittee to put the containers into the park while we do the work on the clubhouse. So the financial envelope is agreed by Strategy and Resources Committee as part of the wider capital investment in the leisure estate, and that's why we're coming here to ask for permission to use part of the park with the temporary facilities, if that helps.
Sorry, just to add as well, I think part of your question was about future decisions and what happens going forward, and I didn't touch on that. We will bring options forward. We will have more detailed information once we understand what those broader costs are, and obviously that will enable decisions at that point. I think to get us to that point we need to do the work, and in order to do the work we need the temporary accommodation. So this is kind of a step into that direction, but we are confident that we've got the money there to do what we need to do here. We need to put the temporary accommodation in to make sure that we can do the work and get the structural survey, so that we don't end up in a situation where the building deteriorates into a place where we have to take emergency measures to take staff out and things. So we're seeking permission to do this so we can get on and do some of the other work.
Okay, so thanks for the answers. I mean, I think it confirms what I was thinking. So I think there's a difference, though, between the broad envelope that there's to be money put into a leisure investment budget, but what I'm looking at is, where's the decision being made that out of that we're going to put money into this particular golf course and not into all the other park buildings that need lots of maintenance? Because it sounds like no one's actually made that decision. And just, well, how appropriate is that? Why does the golf course get something when all the other leisure facilities don't get something at the moment? But also, just from the point of view of starting off on a project, if there's going to need to be a big commitment, and if that's not agreed at some point, because like I said, we can't predict exactly what's going to be decided, isn't there a risk that we're just going to end up with porta cabins in a car park? We're going to have surveys go in. Someone's going to say, oh, we found asbestos in here, we must close the building down, and it's going to be a much bigger job of work than we thought. And then everything's going to be on hold. And, you know, we might end up with these porta cabins being in the car park for a long, long time. And after a few years, people are going to be saying, you know, this is looking really shabby, what's happening here? So I'm just a bit concerned if we're going ahead when we haven't actually had that decision politically about, you know, are we investing in golf courses or are we investing in some of the other things if you can't invest in both?
Jump in for a second. I mean, I think the decision has been made. It was made at S&R. Well, it was. I've been told it was. As I understand it, it was part of a broad spectrum of investments that was made at S&R at some point. We are merely being asked if we are happy to site containers in our car park on charity land in the short term with a fixed period to do so. I think, to be honest, you're mixing decisions up, and I think that we should really get back to what we're being asked to do today, which is talk about it. Curtis, did you want to come in at this point? Is it on this subject?
Yes, on this. Yeah, thank you, Chair. So if I'm correct in understanding, the decision for maintenance and everything was taken a year or two ago by Strategy and Resources or the Co-op Executive. I've got my timings wrong, but one of those governing issues within Sheffield City Council. Of course, Councillor Johnson, you were probably on that committee at the time when that decision was made. The actual spend itself, in terms of a charity subcommittee, is kind of irrelevant because it's a Sheffield City Council aspect. Just as we wouldn't be have the details of what pool pumps they use in Ponds Forge, it's there more for detail by the sounds of it all. And as we are here as members of a charities subcommittee, not Sheffield City councillors, we should kind of be grateful that we're getting lots of maintenance done on one of our charitable assets. So in that regard, I'm quite pleased to see this. I think we probably do have to hold people's feet to the fire that it all goes to plan and that we do get what we're agreeing to today, but I think that's for a future meeting rather than today, so I'm going to vote for this.
Please come back, Douglas.
Yeah. I'm just concerned. I mean, you're quite right in principle, Councillor Crossland, in the sense that S&R would have voted for this, but actually it didn't. I mean, I've checked the reports that I can find. There's no record that this has actually been voted for at all. I'm just concerned that we're going forward on a false premise, and to the extent that that's maybe a concern of the council about, you know, no proper oversight of where the money is being spent. As I said, you know, it could impact negatively on the park as charity if this all goes wrong. But I just want to draw attention. I mean, so next item, we're being asked to approve an item that clearly says that it's the responsibility of everyone active to keep the premises in good repair. I mean, aren't we paying them? You know, why are we yet again outsourcing something, saying we're putting the burden and the responsibility onto the tenant, which is a commercial provider, and then still paying it for ourselves? Yeah, aren't people in Sheffield paying for the same thing twice yet again? That's my concern.
Yeah, I think we should really focus on item 9. I mean, item 10 will be down the track and we will discuss it as and when. I just, from my perspective, we're being asked to give our permission to cite containers as part of a broader leisure process. And unless people disagree strongly, I think that's what we should focus on. Councillor Whittaker.
Can I just get a little bit of clarification mentally here? A porter cabin, it's obviously bigger than a single porter cabin with offices, shops and toilets. So are we talking about a sort of stack of 4 porter cabins? What sort of a size are we talking about? And is it all going to be plumbed in? Is it going to have a septic tank or that sort of thing? As far as the cost, obviously, if these were in continuous use, purchase over rental would be profitable because you get an asset. But if it's up for 18 months and then it's in storage for another 2 years before it's used again, you've got to account for deterioration of the asset as well. And I'm just a little bit concerned about the cost benefits of purchase over rental if we're not going to get continuous use after them round different sites. Thank you.
Before you jump in, Tammy, I think the point is that we're not being asked to approve the purchase. That's been done, and that was done at S&R. We are merely being asked whether we are happy for these things to be sited on our land for a temporary basis so that the functioning of the golf club can continue. And I think we need to focus really on that decision. It's not our remit to think about whether we should or should not be purchasing containers. That decision has been made, and it was made at Strategy Resources. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying that's not true. So unless anyone can find a source of that, then I'm just saying that's not true.
If I may, Chair, and I don't want to prolong this, if you don't, the decision on the leisure investment was made at Strategy and Resources, and then subsequent capital investment was made at Finance Committee.
So I think just back to the point though, those decisions are decisions at a high level that have given us approval through delegated authorities to invest in backlog maintenance off the back of surveys and information. So there won't anywhere in a report, Douglas is right, be a line about porter cabins, the same way that there won't in any line of the report, I don't think, be a line about pool pump or things like that. It's kind of the premise of investing in these facilities longer term. And just to answer the question about the area and the size of the buildings, Appendix 3 actually provides information about the elevations and the size of the facility, and it's 124 square metres of the car park, which is a small proportion of that car park area. So that is included in the report.
Just final point for me, yeah. Thank you for that, Tammy. I knew I was right, so thank you for telling me. It wasn't approved S&R at all. That was complete nonsense. Just final point here is, I mean, this committee last November was told that in respect of this property, the contract with Everyone Active will include the requirement to ensure and maintain the facility. That's the whole of the golf course, including the golf club and everything else. So I'm just saying, this committee was told before that it would be Everyone Active responsible for this. You know, are we now saying that this committee was misled last November? I wasn't on it then, but yeah, it's there in the report.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just come back on that point. It's not about being misled. It's just that even when if you give a lease to Everyone Active and you're the main landlord, you cannot derogate certain responsibilities in terms of maintenance. So there's a very clear line with, I mean, obviously obviously this is just a legal point, so I think actually it's not about being misled. It's just as a landlord, you cannot derogate all of your responsibilities for the maintenance of a building under a lease. So that's just a legal point. And in terms of, obviously, the other points, I do fully understand what you're saying about the committee reports, but we are actually supposed to be looking at perspective, just what the trustee, in terms of what's best for them in terms of this decision. But so bringing it back to that focus. But I just wanted to just bring up that legal point for you so that you know that it wasn't a misleading, it's just a legal point.
Okay, so I agree with the legal advice there. Thank you for that, it's helpful. But the consequence of that means that when the statement says that it will be down to everyone active to maintain the building, that will be misleading because you've just described how that's not the case. I'm just saying, what I'm trying to push for is a bit of rigour in these reports, so that when we get reports here, they actually contain statements that are true and simply not misleading, and that we don't have to go back on them and compare them with previous reports where we're being told something completely different and sometimes diametrically opposite. As you can tell, it sometimes annoys me.
If I may, just for a point of clarity, repairs and maintenance of High Hazels House sits with everyone active. This is about capital investment and bringing the building back up into its useful life, and they are two different things. Going forward, everyone active has a lease and is responsible for repairs and maintenance, but as the monitoring officers pointed out, this council still retains some responsibility for the condition of that building when it hands over the lease, and that's what we're trying to do here.
I've made my points. I'm still considered to be misleading in that previous report, notwithstanding the, what makes sense in terms of the legal position. Sorry, but it's just how it is.
Well, could I suggest, Douglas, that you raise this at Strategy and Resources rather than at this committee? But I think you've laboured the point, and I think you have to be careful in accusing reports of being misleading and accusing me of actually saying things that are not true when they are actually true and they're in good faith. And I think we just have to be slightly careful. So if we can get back to the agenda item, if nobody else has any other comments, we are recommended to note the contents of the report. Secondly, approve the proposal to allow the installation of temporary accommodation on the car park at High Hazels Park for a period of up to 18 months from the date of this decision. Approve the progression of essential investigative work at High Hazels House. And finally, note that a further report will be brought back to this committee to seek the necessary approvals for any future work at High Hazels House once options have been fully explored. Are we all agreed? No. Fair enough, that's your right.
I'll still carry out. Given what I said, I'm not even happy noting the contents of the report, so I'll vote against.
Okay. Can I, in that case, I need to have a show of hands, please. All in favour? 3, 4. Against? Thank you. So that's passed on a split vote. Thank you. Item 10, which we've touched upon, is amendment to tenancy at will at Tinsley Golf Course. Over to you, Tammy.
Thank you, Chair. So this report follows a previous report that was submitted to this committee in November 2024, where we sought permission to enter into a tenancy at will with Everyone Active SLM Limited for the operation of the clubhouse and the golf course that falls within the charity boundary. I think it's important to say that the tenancy at will has not to date been entered into because when we were preparing the information, Everyone Active stated that that tenancy at will should be entered into with a charitable trust, not with Everyone Active SLM, as it's the charitable leisure trust that actually operates the golf facilities. So in order to make sure that we've got a complete paper trail for that and that the information of this committee is correct, we're seeking to enter into the tenancy at will with Everyone Active Community Leisure Charitable Trust, and that is the purpose of this report. Thank you.
just wanted to be really clear when this information came to light, you know, was this a mistake on our part basically, which, you know, may happen, or obviously because, and is there any impact on the interest line behind this, if you see what I mean? Thank you.
Yeah. There's no impact as we've not entered into any agreements. If we did enter into the agreements with the Everyone Active SLM parent company, it would impact on the rate relief that would be available to the company, and that's not the basis that Everyone Active bid on. They bid on the basis of the charity operating the company. I think in terms of the information, the reason that this happened is because all of the other facilities are operating on a lease, and those head leases are with the parent company, but those leases get reassigned to the charity as part of the deal structure and part of the property arrangements. Because this is a tenancy at will, the tenancy at will can't be reassigned to the charity, and I think it's just something that at the time when we were working on those documents had not been picked up by either legal side in the myriad of documents. So we never entered into the tenancy at will with the wrong organisation, but this has been the first committee where we've had an opportunity to come back and correct what was in that report and make that into the name of the correct operator for that facility.
You happy with that, Frank? Douglas?
Yeah, thanks, yeah. Not going to object to this one at all. Sooner we've got a proper licence signed up, tenancy will signed up with them, the better. Especially as it's to keep the premises in good repair and condition. Can't wait for that to happen. It's there on page 71. What I'm slightly puzzled about is that the premise of this is that this committee agreed to sign the tenancy at will with the wrong legal entity. But again, checking back on the November report, actually this committee didn't even agree that. They just agreed with the provider without it being specific. So I must admit, I'm not entirely sure why this needs to come back here. Maybe Tammy got an answer.
The tenancy at will that was attached to that report named Everyone Active SLM Limited, so we wanted to be proper and come back and get it registered with this committee. But you are right, the main report didn't name them, but the accompanying document did. And I think just on your other point around the investment, just to kind of make it clear on this point around the funding and the finances, the contract that we've got with Everyone Active does give them responsibility for ongoing maintenance of the facility. But for Tinsley, there are arrangements in the contract that say we will deal with the backlog maintenance at of that building, and that sits with the council. So that getting it up to a standard sits with us. That's part of the contract with Everyone Active. There on in, it's over to them and it's their responsibility in the day-to-day maintenance and management, but it is all built in appropriately within the contract. So we're not being asked to do anything here that we're not signed up to legally within our existing arrangements with Everyone Active. This is not them getting away with something that is expected of them as part of their contracting arrangements. This is something that has always been part of that arrangement, and sorry if that's not come across clearly in the papers, Douglas.
Yeah, thanks for that. I haven't seen the document or the contract or the due diligence for it, but I can at least understand that answer, so thanks for pointing that out. That's helpful. Okay.
Thank you, Douglas, and yeah, valid comments, thank you. If nobody else has any other comments or questions, then we'll go to the recommendation, which are as follows. 1, note that the subcommittee should note the contents of this report. Secondly, agree that the council acting as a charitable trustee enter into a tenancy at will with SLM Community Leisure Charitable Trust on the terms as set out in the closed appendix 2 of this report. And thirdly, note that a further report will be brought back to this committee to seek necessary approvals for the leasehold disposal once these have been negotiated. Are we all agreed? That is agreed unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you, Tammy, for your time. Okay, our final item today is item 11, which is Graves Park Northern Nurseries update to trustees. This is, as we discussed right at the beginning, has potential to go into private session. I really would like to keep as much as possible out in the open. I think it benefits both this committee, it benefits interested parties. But if you'd like to undertake your report, please, and if you could just... I know you've spoken, but would you like to formally introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm with Belle, I'm head of Parks and Countryside. I don't know exactly how you want to run this. Obviously, I'm not going to go through the report. I'll speak for a little bit, and then we can see where we end up, if that's okay. So the report updates the Charity Trustee Subcommittee on the correspondence that was received recently by the Council as sole trustee of the Graves Park charity from the Charity Commission. Legal advice, external legal advice that's been obtained on that correspondence, and then sets out a brief course of action. As you've mentioned, there are 3 closed appendices that are not available in the public report pack. One of the things that I think we set out in the report is that there are some options that need to be brought back to the committee to establish how Norton nurseries will be used going forward, and I'm happy to set those out if that's okay. And please, legal, feel free to jump in if I say anything that takes us beyond the edge of the legal privilege. So we believe that for the short-term options, so that is the current use of Norton nurseries, we think that the committee will have the following options available to it. That the current arrangements can be continued under a formal licence. So this is the decision that was taken back in November last year. A formal licence that charges Parks and Countryside for the use of Norton nurseries. The charity could permit Parks and Countryside to continue using Norton nurseries only to support the Graves Park charity, or it could say that it's going to take Graves Park maintenance in-house, do it itself and use Norton nurseries for that purpose, so separate it out entirely from Parks and Countryside. Or it could take back Norton nurseries from Parks and Countryside with a view to getting an external provider to undertake the maintenance of Graves Park. Those are the 3 short-term options available that we're going to have to cost up and bring back to the committee. Those options are slightly different from the longer-term options, and that's on the basis that obviously Graves Park needs to continue being maintained tomorrow, next month, the month after that, whilst work is being done on what a longer-term option would look like. We believe there are a slightly larger number of long-term options for the charity to consider, and these are predominantly, and I say predominantly because there's kind of almost everything in between these 4 key options. At one end, the charity could permit Parks and Countryside to continue using Norton nurseries as it does currently, the entire Norton nursery site, and that would be based on Parks and Countryside paying the charity a fee. So obviously in the decision that was taken back in November, that fee was discussed, the land had been valued externally, so Parks and Countryside pays a market rent for the use of that site, and then charges the charity for the work that it does. Obviously, you know that happens via Parks and Countryside staff doing the work and that being represented through the financial accounts of Graves Park charity. Right at the very opposite end of that, the charity could take back possession of the entire Norton nursery site, so that the land could be restored in whole or in part back to parkland, and the charity could purchase maintenance service from a third-party operator or from Parks and Countryside, on the basis that Parks and Countryside were operating from elsewhere within the city, not on the Norton nursery site. Somewhere in between those 2, the charity could provide its own maintenance services for Graves Park in-house, which would end its existing arrangements with Parks and Countryside to use Norton nurseries as an operational base, and it would end the existing arrangements for Parks and Countryside to maintain Graves Park charitable land. And then a 4th option is that Parks and Countryside could be permitted to continue utilising some of Norton nurseries, perhaps a smaller footprint, and obviously we've talked at length about that, and about what other options might be available for some of the elements at Norton nurseries that we would like to move out of there sooner rather than later. Does that make sense? Brilliant.
Thank you. Fran, you indicated your questions.
Thank you. I've got a few things to say, Chair. Hope I'll try not to take up too much time, but it's obviously been quite a lengthy, ongoing discussion around this, and I'm really pleased, firstly, that we're having a discussion out in the open. I don't think there's any justification for discussing it behind closed doors, and perhaps you could confirm, I think we discussed last week, that Appendix A we could make public quite quickly. I understand the reasoning behind Appendix B, but I couldn't actually understand, I'm saying A, B, C instead of 1, 2, 3. I couldn't really see what was confidential in Appendix 3 either. It doesn't have any financial information in it. It just spells out options, which, frankly, I think you've just done, Ruth. So yes. I do agree that I'm not clear why that one isn't open, but anyway, what I want to say is I don't think I've made any secret of my preferred solution around this, whether to other members, to officers, or to the Friends of Grave Park, but perhaps, especially for the benefit of the Charity Commission, I wanted to state it very publicly that ever since I've been on this committee, I've visited Graves Park several times. I've seen the work that the Friends group have been doing up there, some fantastic work on the Chantry Land Meadow and the Arboretum, and I would like to see that work continue in the way that you've planned it and that we discussed in the public question that you brought earlier. And I recognise that that means returning at least some of the land that's currently occupied by the operations depot in order to return it to parkland. But it's also been really clear that there are costs involved in doing that, and again you've spelt out some of the potential costs there. At least part of the operations depot has to go elsewhere. There's cost to that. And I just don't think as members of the committee we can responsibly take a decision on that until those costs are really spelt out to us and we understand the impact that they will have on the charity's finances. And that's why we haven't been able to take that decision up to now. But I do feel we've been really clear about it. It is now getting on for a year since I and other members of this committee requested officers bring us that paper that spelt out the alternatives to the current situation and the costs involved, so that we can take a decision that's based on factual impacts on the charity. And I think it's exactly the same information that the most recent letter from the Charity Commission says we should be considering, and that you've just spelt out there, Ruth, in your introduction, the many different options that are there that have a range of different costs attached to them. So I feel we have been asking for that information, and I appreciate that officers have made some headway on it as well. And I do understand that it's difficult to put all that information together when we haven't yet got a firm prospect of an alternative site, so it's not straightforward. But I also understand the Friends' frustration that we're practically a year on and we feel no closer to a decision at the moment. Now, I do think we've made some limited progress in getting the information together, because we do know the proportion of the operations that relate to Graves Park, which will be that are currently in the park. We've had that discussion. And we've had that independent valuation of the depot area. What we haven't yet seen is the estimation of any costs that would be incurred if the park maintenance was carried out independently and not by Parks and Countryside. And we don't have an estimate of the cost to the charity of relocating operations in whole or in part to another location. And they're the facts that we need to make the proper decision at the moment, I think. So the decision last December was to grant this temporary licence to give time for that information to be pulled together, but ensuring that in the meantime the charity is appropriately recompensed for the siting of the base through that independent valuation. So I do believe that decision was in the best interest of the charity based on the information that we had available. So I do have a question about what can we do now to expedite the rest of the information we need. I know we've talked about at least 2 potential sites that could work. One may not be available now, but surely we know some of the relocation costs involved with that. And how quickly can we pull together the figures on the cost of the park being maintained independently? Because once we've got those, we are in a position to take those next steps. I had a couple more general points as well about the glass houses and about the charitable and the governance of charitable parks. Do you want me to make them all now or give officers a chance to come back on those first? Or?
Considering the length of your original question, Fran, I suggest that maybe the officers come back with that first part.
Okay, so just since we received the advice and had discussions, Ruth and I believe that we'll be in a position to bring a further report back to committee with some of those costs in September, if possible. Maybe not all of them, but we will do our best to bring as much as we can in September to the next meeting of this committee. What we have done, the work that we have been doing has been focusing on finding another site for the operations, for the whole operations. So what we haven't done in that, as part of that work, is then broken down the costs for the options that Ruth's just gone through, because we've been focusing on a site, finding the site, and then looking at the relocation of the park's maintenance equipment and staff. So we will now focus as well on developing the costs involved in the options that Ruth's described, of both stripping out the maintenance, keeping it together, and so on. So we will bring that back to you in September, if that's acceptable.
If I could answer that. My slight concern is that you mentioned that we can bring back some of the costs. I'd really be much more comfortable if we have the suite of the options costed out so that we can make an informed decision. I wouldn't want to be sitting here making a decision knowing that potentially there's something over here that could still be an option. I don't know how other members of the committee feel, but that's my feeling. That we want to. I'd rather you had a little bit more time. I know it's taken a while, but it's a big project, and you can come back and say, these are comprehensively the options on the table. Yeah? Are you happy with that, guys? Ladies? Sorry.
Thank you.
Happy with that. I think specifically, I don't want to be here in December going, can we extend that licence because we haven't got this sorted out yet? I absolutely do not want to be in that position, and I understand that, yeah, the information takes time to get together, and I do appreciate that you have. I know you've been working hard to try and find that long-term solution as well, but I think we need some of the shorter-term options spelt out to us ahead as well.
Yeah, we can do that, and I appreciate giving us that that time as well. We will expedite it, and as I said, we anticipate we'll be able to give you the suite of options in consideration of the legal opinion that we've had and the discussion that we can have about that, and notwithstanding anything changing, then we will continue to deliver that information for you as soon as possible.
The second point was a more general point. It's not really a question, but I did want to make sure people on the committee and watching the committee were aware that that the council's legal position as charitable trustee for Graves Park and other charitable parks. Now, all the members here have received training around this, with the exception of our substitute, though he has been briefed around this. And we do understand our duty, I think, to avoid conflicts of interest. But I think we also have to acknowledge that it's difficult when the council not only manages and maintains the parks, but it provides all the staffing, it provides all the equipment, it's subsidising the parks via grants. And so I think all of us on the committee are doing our level best to separate out any potential conflicts of interest, while acknowledging that we may not get it right all the time. And I know that we have been flagging up for a while that the Governance Committee have had charitable governance of parks, governance of charitable parks on their work plan for a while, and I did see it was on the noted on the work plan earlier, but I think we can confirm that July's Governance Committee intends to commence that work through a task and finish group made up of members of this committee to take that work forward so we can properly consider how we bring more independent voices to the table to support our decision making around this, and I really hope that that will help us to involve users of our parks more and ensure that we're always putting the public interest first in our decisions. So I just wanted to highlight that. And then my last point, and I'm looking at Sherry a bit here, was about something else specific in the Charity Commission letter about the Northern Nursery glass houses. Is it appropriate for me to... Stop me if you think I'm saying something wrong.
So I do apologise, as obviously, as you know, David Sellers has been assisting people on specifically on that. We would, I think, just at this point, because we are obviously getting on that particular point, we are actually going out for some further advice. I would just not say anything.
Curtis, you wanted to say something? Speak.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would like some more confirmation on why much of this item is restricted. I know we covered a bit of it at the beginning, but I think it'd be good to spell that out a bit, because the first that, as a member of this committee, that I saw this big restricted item was, ironically, on Friday the 13th, when the agendas got sent to us. And I know I'm very grateful for the Chair as well for pushing for as much of this to be public as possible, because when we sit here as trustees of a charity, as I said earlier, not as our elected councillors. So we're here to manage the assets on behalf of the people of this city, who these assets belong to, not the council. So when we make decisions, I want the people of this city to be able to make those decisions along with us. That's kind of what democracy is about. So I've got two questions, really. Again, why is much of this item restricted? And then secondly, when all the options are brought to us, will all of that be public so we can make a well-reasoned and sound decision on behalf of the owners of our charitable assets?
Thank you. Did you want to come in as well, Lisa, at some point? No,
I think
okay.
if you address it first.
Yeah, certainly. Can I just address the first one with you? Is that obviously, I think we're keeping it open in terms of what the decision you're making today. So you're just noting that. So obviously, any of the bigger decisions that are going to come forward from what you're being asked for today will be clearly documented and will come back to this committee. The only reason that you at the moment, when you get a bit of legal advice, and this for everybody, we've got that legal advice. We've wanted to make it as open to, obviously, to all of you on this board as soon as possible. But at the moment, that is still being considered. So it's not to say that, you know, there may be a time further down the line then that information can be provided. But at the moment, it's under consideration and it's under a legal privilege. It's called a legal privilege while we are considering that. And that is known, you know, that's what happens if you were to go somewhere and to, you know, as an independent person and get some legal advice. You wouldn't want that to go until you've actually considered it and you've considered your options. But we wanted, obviously, members here to be aware of that so that you could have that and you know it about it. So it's not about not being transparent, it's just saying at this particular point in time, it is not, from a legal perspective, in the best interest for that information to be given to the public, and that is only at that one point in time. So that's, but hopefully that is helping, you know, but we wanted to give you all as members that information, not members, but as trustees.
Ruth.
I just wanted to add, when the options are brought back to this committee, I want to be clear that as much as it is possible to be open will be open, but I don't want to suggest that everything will be, because if you consider what I just listed, it includes, for example, a third-party operator undertaking potential costings of a third-party operator. If we go out and get people to tell us how much they might charge, that information will probably be commercially sensitive. So there may be small elements that remain restricted for whatever reason. But like the November conversation that was had about the short-term licence, actually I believe that entire conversation happened in public. I don't think we went into closed session because whilst there was a small amount of information that was commercially sensitive, the conversation was able to be had in public. So I think the same might apply when the options come back. I don't want to state definitively that everything will be open because that might not be possible. We can't share information that third-party operators don't want us to share, for example. There may be some small legal elements that are not shareable, but as much as can be open will be open in the report. And I think probably the entire conversation will be able to happen in public.
Does that answer your questions, Curtis?
Yeah, totally understand that if a separate entity is quoting us a certain amount of money, it has quite big impacts on them and their competitiveness as well. So, but I think we can probably just blank that bit out and discuss everything else. But that's useful. Thank you.
Okay, Douglas.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think on that last point we're okay because there's no prices quoted in these closed appendices. I agree with what Councillor Belbin was saying about our approach, so thanks for saying that. I think we're on the same page there. So I'm just thinking, we've kind of gone over a lot of the concepts we had earlier on in the meeting about the closed appendices. It obviously has vexed us all quite a bit. Looking at them now, I think things have moved on since an hour ago. So there are 3 appendices on this one. The first one is simply the letter from the Charity Commission, and with Councillor Belbin, I can't see any reason why that shouldn't be out in the open, and so I guess that will be in due course. I'm sure the Charity Commission ought to make it available if need be. And then Appendix B is the legal advice, and we've had good advice from the Deputy Monitoring Officer that we need to have that so we can formally make a decision today to show that this committee has received external legal advice from a barrister. Whilst I might not like that that's closed, I can see the reason for that. And then Appendix C was meant to be the closed one, but actually you just read it out. So I don't think there's any great secret there. I'm not comfortable being in a position where we're being asked to take actions which are filed in a closed report, but actually I don't think we need to today. So from the response from the Deputy Monitoring Officer that I flagged up after a pre-meeting, I think all we need to do today is just accept that the Charity Commission has written to us as trustee that we accept we need to reply back, and we have received external legal advice. But all the rest is just work in progress, and actually as elected members we now expect our officers to work through the legal advice, advise us on a suitable response to the Charity Commission, and so we can move on from there. I don't think we need to decide anything more than that today. It's just been really unfortunate that we've come up with a report that appears to contain more than it actually does. It actually doesn't contain a great deal. People are doing some work, and I don't doubt that, but that's all we need to say at the moment. So I'll probably propose that as a way forward, just to get us out of this dog's dinner. I used the phrase before, but I'll still use it now, but I can see that the bowl is beginning to be cleaned up.
Your point is well made, Douglas. Could I ask legal advice to come back on that?
Thank you, through you, Chair. We are, obviously looking at the recommendations, obviously the first point is clearly you just noting the contents of the report and the closed appendices, so that part of the recommendations is absolutely fine. I think in terms of what you're agreeing is the second one, is that we're asking you as trustees is to say that, look, what is in that closed report, which is the options bit that obviously at the moment we're considering, we'd like to consider all of those options. So we're asking you to agree, and I think that is really important that we have that information, and that is agreed today, that we take that forward. Now, no decision's going to be made, so it's not a formal decision, we're just agreeing that you allow officers to go away and do that work to come back, because it will inform the overall bigger decision. That I think that the recommendation, and that's just to you, Chair, is adequate, and is the one that that we would need to be able to take this further, or officers to take this further.
I mean, a very quick point on that. I have no problem with agreeing that recommendation, and we all want to do that. But I think we've already done this. I think we did this last July when the committee asked for the alternatives report to be put forward already. So I'm quite happy to agree again, but we have already asked for this. So just being clear that this isn't new.
Ruth.
I just wanted to say that on the basis of legal advice, we are going to be doing a new piece of work that we have not started because we weren't asked to do it. We didn't consider doing it, which was around whether Parks and Countryside do the maintenance at Graves Park or not. We haven't started work on that, so that's not a piece of work that we started because it is as a result of this advice that we will be looking at that.
But I do think that was implicit in what we were asked to do last year anyway, but again, that's fine. I think let's just get on and do it.
Yeah, what I would say is I think we can wring our hands about where we got to, but I think we have a clear way forward now. And I think that if we follow these recommendations, then that just reinforces exactly what our expectation of what the officers do. And I genuinely feel that the officers do have a clear understanding of what we're asking going forward. So on that basis, unless anybody else, did you want to say something, Douglas?
I'm just going to say, I mean, I think in practice things are working out. In theory, it's still a dog's dinner. I'm just not happy with having my name down as saying they agree to a proposed action in the closed appendix. And as I said, we don't even need to decide that. Officers already have the authority to go away and basically do the day-to-day job and then report back when there's actually something to report back. It just seems this whole paper was a bit too premature, really. So I'm just not going to vote for recommendation 2. I'm going to vote against that, and I do want my name down against that. But you know, it doesn't seem to be an insurmountable problem in practice. It's a serious issue, but it just seems to me. I mean, surely the way forward is that Graves Park's a really important park. It obviously needs maintenance. You need some depot there because you need to maintain that park with things there. It would be ridiculous to take everything off site, surely. And if there's some extra benefit for the parks, then
we've asked the officers to go away and produce a series of options.
Sure.
You're preempting that decision with your comments when you don't have the information. So I suggest
that
this
is the problem we're having in a closed appendix.
It's got nothing to do with the closed appendix. We quite clearly are asking officers to produce a series of options of the way forward for this. I think we should just let them go ahead and do that.
It'd be about time if they did, frankly. I mean, that's what we need. I don't mean to be rude to anyone, but, as Councillor Belkin said, we've been waiting for this for a year, which I wasn't aware of, but if we have, it should be done.
Well, we can wring our hands about what hasn't happened in the past, or we can actually go forward in a positive way. Councillor Whittaker, you'd like to speak?
Yeah. Right. I'm new to the committee. It does mean I have no preconceived views, but it does also mean that I'm somewhat ignorant, despite reading up on things, about a lot of the background. Can I just have a simple clarification of something from my own head before I'm involved in making any decision that might involve finances or anything? And that is the Graves Park Trust and the Graves Park Charity. Now, the Graves Park Trust is presumably left over from the start of the park, the inauguration of it, right back in the day. What funds is it now administering? Does it have an income stream? And in what way are they separated from funds that the Graves Park Charity administers?
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker. At I think it was the last meeting in March, we had our finance colleagues and an external auditor present the accounts for all the charities, and that explains how income for Graves Park and other charitable parks has to be accounted for separately to any other income, and that is set out in audited accounts each year that then sent into the Charity Commission as well. So you can find all of the charitable accounts online and they are audited, so each income stream is set out. Also set out in the accounts, as with any company or charity, is the cost to maintain the park and the costs associated with doing so. So that was the first. I hope that answers your question. The other point I would just like to make is that if, for instance, this meeting had been 4 weeks later, this report would have probably looked very different. We have been progressing the options to relocate the depot from Norton Nurseries. The legal advice that we then subsequently received has led to reconsideration of that in its, as an independent piece of work, and then to asking us to consider the options that Ruth has set out. So that's why the report is not as we would have intended it to be. And if this meeting had been 4 weeks later or even 2 weeks later, the report might have looked very different. So I just wanted to say that the legal advice has determined the report today rather than the work that we've been doing.
Okay, I think we've kind of got to where we are. Unless anybody's got any further questions or queries, then I suggest that we go through the recommendations, which are as follows. The Charity Trustee Subcommittee is recommended to 1, note the contents of the report and the closed appendices, and 2, agree the proposed action in the closed appendices. Are we in agreement on that?
Sorry.
We have...
So formally I'll agree with 1 and disagree with 2.
Right, the question I have is, can you do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Fine.
what you need to do is you just, if you do the recommendation and just take it.
Okay, in that case,
To keep parts.
can we take recommendation 1?
Yeah.
Note the contents of the report and closed appendices. Are we in agreement with that?
Yeah.
That is unanimous, thank you.
So then take 2.
Recommendation 2, agree the proposed action in the closed appendices. Are we in agreement on that?
Nope.
No, you're not. Okay, so we, yes, so that is recommended in,
So it's
4
4.
for, 1 against.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your reports.
Just clear that that has been approved. I'll leave it.
Yeah, and it's approved in total. So thank you very much. That concludes our business today. Thank you.
Thanks.